Didn't he just get up and walk off before the song was done? Hi, everyone. Welcome to a special weekend focusing on rock music with orchestra. And we did a poll on Patreon, and you have chosen for me which rock with orchestra songs I'm going to listen to this weekend. I'm really looking forward to it. Today's song is Nothing Else Matters by Metallica, but it is the S&M, the Symphony and Metallica version. And I've heard many of you talking about that for a long time, saying, you really ought to listen. Finally, it's my weekend. And I have done the original studio version of this. I have done my first listen to that. So it's a song that I am familiar with. It's going to be nice to hear and compare. Well, of course, this is from Metallica's live Symphony and Metallica album with the San Francisco Symphony conducted by Michael Kamen. And it was recorded on April 21 and 22, 1999 at the Berkeley Community Theater. Also, this is the final Metallica album to feature bassist John Newsted. So let's just dive in and see how it sounds. Interesting. I like the way when you add the orchestra, I like the way the different instruments are helping it to have more dynamic tonal color shifting and layering. I don't know actually if I favor this version over the original. Right, I've just listened to the introduction, but this is one of the things that I've always appreciated about orchestral and shall I say multi-instrument ensembles where there are a lot of different instruments with a lot of different sonic qualities. And this is one of the things that as a composer, as an arranger, as an orchestrator, people think about, and that is, okay, I have all these instruments. I can write a nice piece of music to go with it, but how can I use this like a palette of different colors or a whole? Let's go with a different illustration for a change. Let's say an interior designer, where you're thinking not only colors, but also texture, types of surfaces. How do you use all this that's at your disposal in the orchestra to enhance and add a kind of depth and multidimensionalism? And I hear that coming out even in just this introduction, where even though it's still using the guitar as kind of setting the stage, you still stay kind of true to the original in that regard. With the orchestral support or inclusion, we have everything from the basses adding a kind of warm depth to the bass line, which is new here, to even the touches of harp, which come in. And harp and orchestra is a whole different field that we could talk about forever. I'm not going to do that right now, but I notice how they're using the harp as kind of a shall I say, sprinkles on the ice cream in terms of how it's contributing to the guitar part, because it's certainly not taking over the guitar part, but it's adding a kind of different tonal quality to certain places where the guitar might wish to have that but doesn't. And so the harp steps in and says, I'll take over here for just a minute and help you enhance this. And of course, you have the sweeping strings and all of that stuff as well. So this is what I'm noticing right away at the beginning with the introduction.
So close, no matter how far. Couldn't be much.
And you really hear those double basses there in that moment, kind of exposed.
Forever trust in who you are, and nothing else matters.
So
Never open myself.
I saw a chorus featured there. Let's back up and see if we can hear what they're contributing a bit more.
How far? Couldn't be much more from the heart. Forever trust in who you are.
Oh no, that's not the chorus, that's the audience.
Nothing else matters.
I think.
Never opened myself this way. Life is ours, we live it our way. Hold these words I don't just say, and nothing else matters. Yeah, trust I seek and I find in you. Every day for us something new. My mind for a different view, and nothing else matters. Never care for what you do.
Okay, another thing I'm really enjoying is how the choice of orchestration and the way the instruments are being used makes his voice really pop out as really the focus. So in the original, I remember it was mostly guitar with some drums and his voice, and it sounded nice. I liked it. But as it is in a smaller ensemble, you have more of a each instrument, each contributor to the ensemble has to carry more weight, has to play a larger role because there are simply fewer, right? Now here, in an orchestral setting, we can have an instrument just play one note somewhere along the way just to enhance one little moment. And it's easy for an orchestra with all that sonic capacity to overwhelm the soloist if it's not done well. What I really like about this is, and I'm thinking, okay, I notice at least up until now, they're really tending towards the bowed strings feel. It's the sweeping, almost do we say romantic movie soundtrack, strings, sweeping strings, that sort of feel. But then his voice, which has a particular brightness to it and pointed, penetrating tone, stands out so nicely against those softer strings. I really like the choice of balance between the voice and the instrumentation behind it, because it kind of makes me think of, let's say, a painting with quite a soft background, and then the subject is in a bright color, and it's very strongly outlined. Maybe even not really a painting. It could be a pen and ink center focal point, something like that. Something really, really strong and contrasting. I love the contrast that I'm hearing, and at the same time, it doesn't sound like it doesn't match. Sometimes a contrast can simply not work. You know, it's like, okay, we have one and the other, but they're kind of separate and they are better on their own. Here, I feel like the way it's put together, the way it's balanced, it works very well.
Every day for something.
Notice how bright and present his voice is. And then you hear strings stepping in, but it doesn't vary his voice. Really nice.
Never care for what they know, and I know. So close.
Okay, here comes the drum.
Couldn't be much far from the heart. Forever trusted.
I just gotta stop a moment to appreciate that little screenshot there, because what did they choose to put on the screen to represent the orchestral printed music part? The harp part. Check it out. Look at this. It's just great, isn't it? You see the violinist with this score with his music in front of him. And then drums coming in. Okay, that's all good. Nice timing. Here. Take a good look at this. Nothing else matters. Harp. This is the harp part for the orchestral version of this piece of music. That's what they chose to put on camera. Okay, in the grand scheme of things, it's not a big deal. But for me as a harpist, I think, oh, how nice they chose the harp part to put on the screen.
Forever trusted who we are, and nothing else matters.
Listen to his voice. It stays present and clear above everything else.
Never care for what they know, and I know. Yeah, that's right.
You know, watching this, I have to say that something else, another question comes into my mind. I don't know, is this my first time seeing a video of rock music with orchestra? I guess I saw some. No, I've seen some. I saw Deep Purple, and I watched a live of Nightwish, which also was a sort of blend mix, I think. Or no, it wasn't Nightwish. It was Blind Guardian. Yeah. But somehow just now, as I'm watching this, maybe it's because it's been a while, or maybe it's because I already am familiar with this song in its studio version context. Now, as I'm watching this, I'm thinking, what is it like for, say, the drummer? He's used to being the rhythmic anchor for the music. He's used to being kind of the one that holds it all together. And when you work in an ensemble, well, okay, let me back up. It's a very different thing to be an orchestral musician versus being a musician who works in a small ensemble without a conductor. In an orchestra, you have to be good at following the conductor, even if what the conductor says doesn't agree with your instincts. Because in the end, it's the conductor's vision, it's the conductor's direction that gets everything to coalesce into something that works. I mean, he's the driver. He's the one behind the steering wheel. And you've got to follow, even if you think, oh, I would have liked it a little bit differently here. So I'm thinking, what is it like for these musicians who rarely play in an orchestral setting, rarely play following a conductor, who are used to being the ones kind of in the driver's seat as far as setting the tempo and pacing and all of that. I wonder what it was like for them to do something like this. Obviously, they've done rehearsals, and I don't know if this probably wasn't the first time that they did this, but what was it like the first time they sat down to do a project like this. That is an interesting thing. I would love to hear someone talk about who's done it. Now, of course, it's something that it's a skill anyone can learn, and many musicians have both orchestral and ensemble and solo experience and fill all those roles. But I'm thinking for a band who grew up and built their skills and identity in the band or small group context, to step out of that for the first time must have been a little bit challenging in some ways. And I would love to hear how and what was the experience like. Anyway, just some thoughts crossing my mind as I'm watching this. I guess there's some piano in there as well. Piano or keyboard. Another moment, I guess that I would say, another moment where this time it's not the harp, it's the piano or piano sounding keyboard that is enhancing and expanding the tonal palette of the guitar.
Never cared for what they know. And I know. That's right.
Right here. Notice how then the guitar steps in. And all of that is just subtle coloration and enhancement. And I guess I mentioned it once before, but one of the things that it's not unheard of, but it's not the most common thing in an orchestra, at least classical orchestral music. You don't always hear a sort of bass line left to stand alone, rather exposed. And this is an interesting choice here, kind of is a good illustration of the modern element of this, because this bass line is important, and to have it exposed here and just hear all those basses and cellos and everything carrying it on and walking it down deeper and lower, it's kind of a fun moment for me. Listen. Here. When he's singing, listen. There it goes. And we just sit back.
And nothing else matters. Yeah. Trust I seek and I find you know. Every day for us something new. Open mind for a different you. And nothing else matters. Never cared for things they say.
A lot of
Never
textural
cared for
stuff.
games they play.
Yeah.
I never cared for what they do.
Yeah.
I never cared for what they do.
Oh, the strings get choppy too.
And yeah.
Yes, I will listen to the whole guitar solo all the way through. But I want to go back and just take a minute to appreciate that transition as it went from the orchestra with the voice and the drums, and then he lets out that scream, and I was like, oh, that works really well there. And then I realized, oh, that's also moving us towards the guitar solo. It's a nice balance and transition. Okay, backing up a little bit. Let's go from here.
I never cared for what you do. I never cared
A
for
little choppier, a little more disturbed, like choppy water. Working up towards something. Not. Now, with this guitar solo, you still hear orchestral backing. Back to the solo guitar again with that bass. Now the strings coming in on top, and that guitar. Interesting. Didn't he just get up and walk off before the song was done? Um, let's just watch that last little bit there again. These sound effects are very atmospheric. He walks off in the middle. Okay. Interesting. I don't, it's not an unheard of thing for someone to walk off, to slip out in the middle of orchestral performance, but for the soloist, for the center of attention, to enforce what I'm saying, the center of attention, the one in the spotlight, to, before the piece is over, to just get up and leave is interesting, different. Somehow it makes me think more in terms of a stage, like a Broadway type or stage production where there are multiple acts coming and going, or something theatrical, less like an like a symphony orchestra performance. So switches the dynamic a little bit there at the end for me. But I don't know. Now it also makes me curious to see how is that whole album, if it's start to finish, one concert, then how does it change and what's happening between? Do I get to see what's happening between the pieces? And that might explain some of that too. I enjoyed that. I did. I enjoyed knowing the piece enough that I could feel and hear and appreciate the differences between the rock studio recorded version and the Rock with Orchestra version. I don't know if I would have appreciated it as much if this were my first time hearing the song ever. I don't know. That's kind of a guessing game. But I did enjoy and appreciate it, and I really feel like they did an excellent job setting it with the orchestra. It didn't feel like the orchestra was just something patched in there to as a novelty factor. It also didn't feel like it was unbalanced either towards the classical orchestral tradition or the rock tradition. It felt like they really came together and melded together well. And each side of the coin had something to contribute and make it a satisfying performance as a whole. So again, this is a special weekend focusing on rock music with orchestra. And tomorrow I'll be back with another one chosen by you on Patreon. I'll see you then.